Good day, everyone, and a warm welcome to you all. Thank you for joining us. I am Audra Mitchell, your host, and I hope that you are as excited as I am with regards to our session today, Finding Your Music. And this morning I was thinking about it, and I said, picture this. You're driving in your vehicle, you're on a radio station, and what you're hearing is not quite what you need. So what do? You turn your dial, and you find that station. So if you're feeling for music and you happen to hear your favorite song, that does something to you and your spirit, right? So I share that because when I thought about this, finding your music, there's something about when you find your music, discover your passion, it feels right. And you feel energized, and you feel like you could take on the world. So if you're having a bad day and you get that music, it seems you feel as though nothing can go wrong. So I'm really excited about our session today. So before I continue, let me welcome and introduce to you our panelists, two of whom were with us in August when we explored finding your side hustle. So our first panelist is Mrs. Julie Avey, our SVP People and Culture of the Massy Group. Our second panelist is Ms. Anya Ayoung Chee, a design strategist, social entrepreneur, and winner of Project Runway Season 9 in 2011. Now, we can't help but boast about that, right? But for those of you who don't know, I just want to share one other fact about Anya and Julie. So they are also the founders of a bold new venture powered by Massy called Nudge. So Nudge is an entrepreneurship initiative that's created to support and showcase medium, small, and micro enterprises from the Caribbean. Also joining us today is our featured speaker, Mr. Scott Hilton Clarke. And Scott is our CEO of Inspiration Labs. Scott is no stranger to Massy and has partnered with the Massy Group over the years on a number of projects and initiatives. So those of you familiar with the expectations of a Massy leader competency model, Scott was our creator for that.
I think what I'll do is I'll just take you through this presentation that will really give a sense as to what do I mean by that. Audrey, could you just verify? Are you seeing my presentation, my screen?
Yes, I am, Scott.
All right, fantastic, great. So as Audrey said, we'll be talking about finding and living your music, and I know that and many of you on the call have so many varied experiences, different stages of your career. And therefore, I really want to make it clear that finding and living your music is really a very personal journey. Some people start it kind of late in the career. Some people have a sense of it. Others get lost, like myself, a few times and have to kind of refine it. So it's really, really personal. And I'm share with you a little bit about my journey as we do that to give a sense. So every time I do this talk, I really honor Christian Ackerman. He's a schoolmate of mine, and Christian died in 1980. He died on December 23rd, actually, 1980, and he was 17 years old, and he is actually the reason that I am literally here with you today and can talk about this. This is a picture that was taken literally 24 hours before what I would call the accident. And Christian is all the way on the left. Again, he was 17. I'm all the way on the right. I was 16. And the reality is that we were on tour in Barbados, a hockey tour, Christmas holidays. And what happened was the last day of the tour, we were driving around, seeing the island. There was a bus and there was a car. We were in the car. I was in I was driving on the window back seat for most of the morning, and basically Christian sat kind of in the middle seat next to me, and my other teammates were there. And what happened is we stopped to get something to eat, and in that moment, I was coming back to the car, and I had the food in my hand, and up to this day, I'm still somebody that's always holding the food in my community. And what happened was Christian opened the door for me and we switched seats. And in that moment of switching seats, about 5 minutes later, we got into a car crash. And it was fairly catastrophic. I was told that at the side of the road, people who came by thought that both of us were dead. But I survived, and then Christian died a few days later. Okay, and for me, it was a very, very confusing time at 16, 17. Really confronted with some really, really big questions about life and why was I given this second chance. And at that point in time, I made a vow. I made a vow that I would actually try to live a life that was, that was worth it for him. And I was actually at that time a fairly pretty horrible student, but this gave me some ambition. And when I say horrible, I mean really horrible. My dad used to write to the priest at the school that Scott, we all praying for Scott in my report card and things like, Scott's a late starter. But nevertheless, I went to university, and I like to say I got on the escalator of life. And went to university, I got a great job. I then got married. I then went to business school. I went to Harvard Business School. Then I started my own firm. I got divorced. Just that life happened. And I fast forward to 1990, literally 1999, where I'm 35 years old. I'm in Kingston, Jamaica. Just won a very lucrative contract with my own firm, and I'm preparing for a client presentation. And I come across a quote, and the quote literally rocks me back in my chair. And it was almost as though I was awoken. Sometimes in life, even when you think things are going well, you're lost, but you don't even know that you're lost. And the quote I'm about to show you, it was almost as though Christian was reminding me of the vow that I had made to him. And this is the quote. Most of us go to our graves with our music still inside of us. And I think why it was such a confrontation for me was I knew that I had, in a sense, broken my vow. I knew that if I, despite all the achievements that I've had at 35 at that age, that if I died, I would have died with music still inside of me. There was something that I was still unfulfilled and had not expressed. And that really took me on a whole different inquiry for myself and the journey that I'm on today. And what I want you to do is just stop for yourself and pause and see your own reaction to this quote, right? When I share this quote, people have varying reactions. Some are confronted, some less so. Some people maybe think of family members or friends that we know that are extremely talented, but we have this sense that the talent is wasting, right? It's a real kind of wake-up call for many of us. And really, this is kind of the million-dollar question that we have to ask ourselves, which is, why do many of us not live our music, right? That's really what, and actually when we do the empath program, that we kind of explore this and see what's in play. But your answer may depend on where you actually locate yourself in the next slide. So some of us, we don't even know what our music is. We have no clue. We're on this quest and feel that way. And then there are those of us that have a sense of it from time to time, but it's kind of a fleeting sense. It comes and it goes. And then there are those that actually know it, but they have this experience that they're not living it. And then there are those of us that know it and then get experiences at some time. And then there are those that know it and mostly live it, right? And that's kind of the range. And what I expect is you'd probably, take a moment to see where you might be on this range. It might not fit. And feel free to kind of ask some questions on this in the Q&A section. But it begins with kind of an awareness to start with, where you are to actually begin your journey. in terms of finding your music. So let me talk a bit about music. So when I talk about music, it's akin to purpose. It's a close family member of purpose, but it's more emotive. I like to think of it as music suggests how is it that we feel literally when we're taking on a task that 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 really we get lost in time, and we have a feeling that wow, this is something I was meant to do. And what we do is we tend to look at it from three components. We look at it in terms of passion, we look at it in terms of talent, and we look at it in terms of uniqueness. And we believe that if you kind of begin to really understand, what's really important to you in terms of your passion, what really excites you, what you're really good at, and what makes you unique as a human being, we believe that when you begin this exploration, you begin to get a real interesting hint towards your music. And this is something you can begin today. You can actually just make a note of what those are and start your own journal to understand what these are and see if there's an answer or direction that begins to show up in the process. And to give you a sense of that, I want to do a little exercise where I want you all to just think for a moment about the best teacher you ever had. All right? Just take a moment. And when I say teacher, it may be a coach, it may be an uncle or an aunt, it may be a grandmother or grandfather, but just see who comes to mind of that and what you will, and it could be, for me it was Mrs. Bailey in Standard 4. And the point really is, if you were to ask yourself, why is it? What about that teacher that actually has them show up? For example, not in all cases, when I do this in a workshop, you get that it shows up because that person was able to identify in some way a passion that you had that they then encouraged you to work on so that you could get good at it. Or they saw a talent that other people didn't notice, or they literally saw something unique in you. The other day I asked a couple of the folks on the call, Dawn in particular, and she had a teacher, Mrs. Springer, that she mentioned. And when I asked her why, she said because she was really naughty, and there was a way that Mrs. Springer just embraced her naughtiness, right? And Dawn felt the warmth that she was so accepted for who she was, and that allowed her to be. And there's something wonderful about just embracing of your uniqueness, right? And I think the big question I have for all of you on the call today is this idea of who is the best teacher in your life today? Who kind of embodies that, right? And if you take away kind of one thing from today's webinar, is the idea that it's really important for you to have people in your life today that is, in a sense, a champion for you, right? In your close circle. I went one step further, and I literally married somebody that embodied that. This is my wife, Jackie. And she's just a wonderful blend of somebody who believes in me and believes in my dreams, but yes, she's grounded, right? And I really want to encourage you, and I really want to acknowledge my friend and colleague, Steve Jacobs, that really brought the idea of us borrowing from professional athletes. Professional athletes, to get their performance and to be the best they can be, they hire all sorts of people. They have sports psychologists, they have trainers, they have people that focus on massage, they have coaches. And the idea as business people, why don't we have as much help as we can for ourselves? So I actually have all of those. I have a psychologist, I have a coach mentor, I even have an astrologist, right? So, people could laugh all they want, but the reality is, this is something not to take on alone. You need to have that. I have a close group of friends I refer to as the Fantastic Four. I have a mastermind group. So one thing to take away is to just, the best teacher you ever had, the spirit of that is something to really take on. So I want to talk a little bit about literally finding and living your music and what's involved in that from that perspective. And again, you can do this very organically on your own. You can look at the three areas I described, and literally just do a journal and do that. But in the empath program, we take people through kind of four phases basically. One is kind of the reveal phase, right? Revealing, where you gain a kind of a personal insight into yourself. We actually interview people in your circle of trust to get a sense of that, sense of your passions, your talents, and your uniqueness. And then we take that almost like CSI detectives to say, what is this? What is your, integrating that new information? What does your new portrait look like? We then take that and begin to craft basically, your not just your pathway, but what are the different expressions of what it can look like with your music. And then we also begin to identify and dismantle resistance to your empath. It's one of those things, if there wasn't any resistance, we'd be all living on music. So it's really good to get a sense as to what is the resistance at times. In terms of expressing, it's really now about plotting kind of a practical journey. We all have lives to live. We all have what I would call non-negotiables. And we have to just factor that in as we do that. So it's not about being irresponsible, it's about how to express it in a way that one could be responsible. And then we encourage people to take action. Even if you do find your music, this phase perhaps is the most important phase of just either refining, where you literally pause, reflect, and how does one actually stay inspired along the journey? That's something that's really difficult and challenging, as they say when you get on the escalator of life. And how do you adjust and re-engage, literally? And you can almost loop back to any of these phases, right? I probably refresh my musical expression probably once a year, right? So what does it look like? Let me just share a little bit as an example in terms of my own, right? I describe myself almost as a champion of greatness. In an earlier iteration, I used to call myself like a greatness detective. I love finding the greatness within people, but I actually do more than that. It has evolved to where I actually spend time ushering, supporting, enabling, and championing the possibility within people. And in terms of the three areas, it's really, I have a real passion around serving people and serving humanity. I'm good at inspiring people, and I have a real unique trait with respect to empathy, listening, and there's a bit of wittiness that I bring to the table. To the left, you'll see kind of the context, and each of us has an environment that we tend to thrive in, and I'm very conscious of that. For me, once is music, laughter, and food. I find that I am at my best in those kinds of environments, and so I factor that in when I'm trying to design an environment to live my music. That's basically what I'm up to. So let me just give just a couple of few examples. These are two people that are very precious to me. This is my son, Levi Howell and Josie DaCosta, and they both have two brands, and they did the empath program with me literally about 4 years ago. And in essence, this is Levi's brand called Levi Marcus. And, it embodies three things basically. From Levi always had a passion around fashion, around being in the Caribbean, as well as fitness and health. So he has come up with his own brand called Levi Marcus that really is focused on the Caribbean lifestyle, specifically Caribbean streetwear. What's really interesting is Jose, she has a real passion around children, around learning, and then she studied fashion. She really has a fantastic eye as well. And she just launched a brand for kids that's an interactive learning fashion brand for children, right? So again, very, very interesting indeed. But here's the point. The point I wanted to make, by the way, is that you can see this and feel as though, well, I'm working in a particular job and I need to go do something radical with my life. And I wanted to make sure this is not about that. You can really find music in very unsuspecting ways. And I want to share one story with you. I was presenting to international top 4 firm and a professional services firm, and they hired me to help them work with some of their senior people who wanted to be partners in the firm. So as I was doing my pitch, one of the top partners for the region came in and said to me, Scott, this sounds, I'm really worried. I hear you coming in, but I'm hearing about this music thing that you're doing. And I have a concern because what if you work with my people and then they tell me they want to be goat herders, right? So I literally rocked back and I just thought it was so funny. I laughed and I said to him, look, I said two things. One is if the people I'm working with really want to be goat herders, as in go into the wild and feel the breeze on their face on a mountaintop, I think it's a good thing that you know sooner rather than later. So that's point number one. But point number two is in this inquiry, what's more interesting is what about herding goats that truly excites them? And what you might find is some people like creating order out of chaos, right? And believe me, there's a lot of opportunities in business to do that, right? So I think the point is really finding your music could literally be something that's a micro motive that you're really passionate about that you can apply. And therefore, I want to kind of introduce this idea of this musical range, where on one level you can literally have, yes, we can go to a new role, or we can actually stay in a same role that we're in now, and have a couple of different things, right? So if you play this out, right, you can be in the same role and have a new assignment where you literally are doing something that really excites you, or literally you can have you talk to your boss about this newfound music and arrange with them to do something that sparks that. In terms of the side hustle, a lot of people, if they can't get that aliveness and passion in their job, the side hustle, this is the bottom right-hand box where you see passion acknowledged outside of work. People can then pursue their side hustle and get that passion. And what happens, the most remarkable thing happens, is when people are passionate outside of work, a lot of times it spills over into work. So side hustles actually have some wonderful benefits. Okay, so that's an example of the various things you can look at. But what I want to leave you with, in a very responsible way, is that this is not about quitting one's job and going back to acting school, right? This is really about understanding what you love about herding goats, right, and seeing how to apply that in your everyday life. I want to end by one of my favorite quotes, which is this idea of how we spend our days is how we spend our lives. And it's one of those really important quotes because I talked about the escalator of life and how we get not distracted. We just have these obligations that can begin to weigh us down. But for me, I literally got a second chance on life, and therefore I take this quote very seriously. I have a whole practice in place where I literally maximize each and every day because I do believe how we spend our days is how we spend our life. So I'll pause here and hand it back over to Audra.
Great, thank you, Scott. So many powerful nuggets, and I'm sure that many of us have a series of questions. So we can delve deeper into this topic, such an important topic, especially at this time with all this disruption and uncertainty, right? When we have to kind of find our way and navigate. So I would like to direct a question to Anya, invite Anya in. So Anya, my question to you is, how would you express your music at this stage in your life? And has it changed somewhat over time? So it's two questions.
Thank you, Audra, and thank you, Scott, for that. I feel very honored to have been able to see that presentation and know that somehow cosmically there's a connection because my brother died at 18 and he died because he switched seats in the car. And that amazing to know that changed my life entirely in the same way that it changed yours. I realized that I was doing something I thought I was good at. I studied graphic design instead of fashion, although I always knew I wanted to do fashion. But for whatever reason, I had resistance to actually going in that direction. And when he died, I knew I couldn't do something halfway anymore. I couldn't do something that only somewhat sparked me. When he died, I went straight, well, took a year really, but it really was the moment that I decided to live my life fully in response to him and the legacy that I felt I had to live up for him. And I do think that I continue to revisit that moment when I lose the sense of what you describe as music. And as a result, over the last, he died, 13 years ago, and I've had to continue to refine, as you're saying. Even though I'm most known for doing fashion, my life has really evolved as an entrepreneur. I've started 10 businesses in the last 11 years, and they're all in the general creative industry field. But I think the line and the thread and what I usually call purpose, but maybe it's much more music, is being in service to my community, to the Caribbean as a whole, particularly to Caribbean women. To Caribbean women who are creatives. It gets more and more refined as I go along. And then with Nudge, it's really expanded beyond even what I expect for myself. So that what you describe as checking in annually or every other year, it has evolved into being able to bring to the table this decade of experience in entrepreneurship to develop this program and this initiative with Julie that I think is having, or we know already is having tremendous impact. And I think that it's my own insecurity to know that I can show up in different ways, and that being multifaceted and being what, the popular word now is being multi-hyphenate is okay. It's okay to show up in different ways. It's okay to have different music in a sense, but there is an undertone that does go back to when my brother died, and really knowing that I have to show up. I have to show up for him. I have to show up for myself. And that has driven me every single day of my life since then. And so yes, I think my music really has evolved, like I was saying, from having clothing lines to opening a co-working space that was really a community of creative people, to having a foundation of my own that leveraged creativity for impacts in social impacts across the region, and now to Nudge, and how Nudge is one of several things I'm working on, but it really exemplifies how I have applied design background to design thinking to design strategy, and how that approach has now increased the impact that I can have, and I see that as a form of service. And every time I feel a little bit overwhelmed by how come I'm showing up in a way that may not be expected of a designer in the classic sense, it's because it's bigger than me, and it's because I feel like a conduit at times from a very personal place, living out this idea of my brother's legacy, and then also from a place of being a woman in the Caribbean in a non-traditional field, and feeling very responsible for showing up for other women like me, and making sure that has a place. So thank you for that question.
Great, thank you, Anya. So in what you shared, similar to Scott, there was a moment, a life-changing moment that really showed up, and you both shared about, based on that experience, really making a commitment, to really find your music. And what I got from you as well is that it can be multifaceted, it can evolve, it can change. So, and it can be many things, because sometimes people think that your music has to be just this one thing. So certainly I got in what you said, it can evolve, it can change, and it can be multifaceted. And as well, having that source of inspiration, that experience that really is sort of like the turning point for us.
Absolutely.
So thank you. So I want to bring Julie in now. So Julie, Scott would have referred in his presentation, he would have been speaking about the Empath program. So as someone who has done the Empath program, how would you describe the experience and the impact that has had on you? So, and of course, then how do you express your music?
Thanks, Aud. Thank you, and morning to everyone. It's so great to be part of this webinar series and to be here with Audra, Scott, and Anya this morning. So I did the empath program a couple of years ago, and it was at a time when I was struggling with regard to what was I doing. I just turned 50. I was at a point in my career and my family life. My kids were at the age when they were more independent, heading off to school, heading off to university, not needing me as much, and just wondering what was life all about. Maybe it was kind of like a midlife crisis, actually, now that I think about it. So the experience with Scott was really lovely in that it was a vulnerable time for me, yet the hand holding and the support and the lightness of the, Scott said he likes a good laugh, so we would have a good laugh, but also going, really digging deep into what is really important in your life and what means a lot, and also what are you good at. And it was quite a lovely experience. And the part of it is that there's a survey that's done, and that's sent out. You choose the people who you believe know you the most, whether these are friends, whether it's family members, whether it's colleagues or past colleagues, someone in your community, in your church, who knows you the best. And then you get these external perspectives on you, which are just lovely to see. And it's amazing to see the alignment because, they know you. And it's really quite stark as to who you are and what's important to you and what you're good at. And what was also quite funny about it is it's only positive. So whereas many times in developmental processes, it's like, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? And I remember a conversation with my husband, and he says, but this is only asking about the positives. I said, yeah, you don't get to say anything about the negatives in this one, honey. So in terms of the experience, while it is unmasking or opening up things that are very deep about you and meaning for your life, it's not difficult. And yeah, so I just really loved it. And in terms of the impact, I think what it allowed me to see is what has brought me to this place that I'm at today. So in terms of the work that I'm doing with Anya on Nudge, what it guided me with is that I'm a warrior for justice, and I have a voice, and I'm a very strong voice. When I choose to fight, watch out, kind of thing was one of the things that came out, and also fighting for the voice that maybe doesn't have a voice, the small man or the person who's not being looked after. I'd be the one in school in the playground if someone was being bullied. Just that can't happen. That's just not allowed. And so in terms of my own music, I get deep joy in using my strength, which I now understand that I have, to impact those that need the support that I can give, that I'm in a place to give. So the experience was great, and the impact is that whether it's in Massy as the head of people and culture, or working with Anya on Nudge, or supporting many of the great people initiatives that Audra has led, Amanda has led, many in our group have been leading for years.
Thank you, Julie. So again, quite interestingly, you also spoke about, coming at turning 50, a significant life event. And you spoke a lot about that, the need to identify what's important in your life, and what you're good at. And then doing the program, as you said, sort of helped you to explore that and to get a sense of what you wanted to do. So what we will do now is that I see a couple of persons have posted some questions in the Q&A. So I'm going to hand over to Rennie and ask Rennie if she can just take us through some of the Q&A questions, and then we'll come back to the panelists after if we have time. Rennie?
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Audra. All right, Scott, this first question is for you. Our first question is from Roxy. Can you speak a little bit more about the process of finding and living your music? For example, how do we integrate the personal insight at the point of realization? And how do we break through the resistance to embracing that personal insight?
Yeah, great question. So there are a couple. So it's a two-part question. So the first part in terms of really integrating that insight, Julie spoke a little bit about it, which was this idea of, and it's so funny how people resist. It wasn't just Julie's husband. It was that when people they look to give negative feedback. It's so much in our education system about being able to tell somebody you need to work on this, right? So part of the integration process is really having kind of the room to really receive what's really great about you, right? Back to the moment, as I said, that best teacher you ever had. And that's a really powerful analogy. So that process is really literally almost being like a detective and being open to those clues and really going to work in your own self-discovery to see what is it that you really, that you have a sense of, that you think that you could be really wonderful at. A mistake that some of us make is we feel we need to be good at it now, but sometimes it could be something that we have a passion about, but we just need to actually spend some time kind of going up the learning curve on that as well. Okay, so that's kind of the discovery process to do that. But the real question you're asking is really about resistance, right? And that resistance piece is where the real juice is. That's where we sabotage ourselves. And I go back to what I said, really having a team of people around you to protect you from yourself, right, is really, really an important point that I wanted to kind of raise to the table that you do. And some of us, need to get professional help, in terms of what are things that really hold us back. And I wasn't kidding. I actually have a psychologist and I have a mentor and a coach that really supports me where I deal with my own limitations, right? And the thing about limitations is we all have levels of insecurity that we deal with, if we're honest about it. And the truth of the matter is, even if you feel secure, if you choose to play a bigger game where you're now outside your comfort zone, guess what? Insecurity shows up again and resistance shows up again. So I'll end by just saying that I know a lot about resistance. My friends tease me, but I always start with no. You ask me to do anything and I say no, right? And I warm up to a yes, right? But the first step is really awareness that I know that I know I'm like that. And if you're just not aware of it, you don't even know where to start. But now that I know that, I listen to my no and my resistance, and then I begin to let it go. And it's a process. It really takes practice, like anything else. It really takes practice, and that's why for some of us, it's a long journey, right?
Okay, great. Thank you, Scott. Okay, this next question is also for you. It's from an anonymous person. What if you have a passion for a particular role and have been supporting your team members and have engaged your managers on it, but they continue to train you on other things for which you do not have the passion for, but still you continue to do the best of your ability? You know deep down that you can make a meaningful contribution with the knowledge you can attain from what you have a passion for.
Wonderful question on so many levels. So many of us find ourselves in that kind of situation, right? And by the way, I'm going to offer this to this person. You can feel free to reach out to me for us to have a sidebar conversation. But the truth is, this is more about having kind of courage, right? At some level to have the kinds of conversations with the people who have an influence in your life, right? And the reality is this: if you keep doing what you're doing, what will happen is obviously resentment is going to begin to build up at some point, and you really want to find a way to arrest that, right? And I would actually look at having a conversation, and I've coached people through these types of conversations, which is, look, I really want to give the best that I can give in my role, in terms of working for you. And in doing so, I really, there are other areas I want to explore. that I can begin to kind of tap into my passion. And I think when you talk to a superior and it's hard for them to resist somebody who's saying, I want to be the best that I can be, right? So opening up with that as an option and to see what's possible from that standpoint is something that I've had many conversations with folks to really help them kind of get through that. But what I'll end by saying is, at the end of the day, there's a term that calls you have to swallow the frog and really have the conversation. Your teammates are probably seeing it, right? As well as this is area of passion, and just take a risk. Just take a risk and ask to see whether it could be considered for you to take it on, even if it's on a trial basis of sorts, so you can begin to literally prove yourself to get the trust to be able to do that. So that's kind of what I would say to that. It's less about the passion, but you know what the passion is. It's really about getting the opportunity to do that. And I know some bosses are more difficult than other bosses, right? And that's why I would need a little more context to know the kind of boss you have to really give very specific ways to enroll them in what you want to do.
Okay, great. Thank you. Our next question is from Michael. Now, you would have mentioned that you practice something to maximize your day. So he's just asking, what is it that you do practice?
Great. So every day I ask myself 4 to 6 questions. It's actually kind of on a board behind here that I have, right? So basically, every day I ask myself, who am I going to love today, right? There's usually somebody in our lives that we've kind of fallen out of touch with, or that we're not in touch like we should with. But I literally make an effort now. Every day I have to love somebody. There's something I want to learn that's new, right? My favorite one is this idea of fun. What am I going to do for fun today, right? And I have to tell you something. When you write down at the beginning of the day what you're going to do for fun, it can be something as simple as, a Netflix series you want to continue watching, to having, dinner with your family. But putting it on paper, my whole day changes as I look forward to doing that fun thing, right? And I'm a big believer, by the way, in pampering oneself. You will not get to anybody else if you don't pamper yourself. So that's something that's really important. So that's love, fun, learn, and then health, right? This is the idea of doing something for your health today, whether you want to eat properly or whether you want to, do some kind of workout, and typically what happens with me is if I know that I am not eating properly, then I have to pay for it by doing some kind of workout perspective. But so those are the 4 basics. Those are the table stakes. And then the 2 other things I ask really around my abundance. What am I going to do today to really help create abundance for myself? So that's that. And then the last one is my music. What am I doing to really express my music, or if not find my music? And that's basically those. So I play that every day, and the truth is, some days I win and some days I lose. But the idea is I really look to see as I go to bed at night, I kind of go through my brain. Did I which one how did I do, right? But it's first and foremost, and it's my little way of trying to get the most out of each day.
Our next question is also from Michael. Not sure if it's the same Michael, but it's for both you and Anya. So, what are some of your most important daily practices that keep you grounded in your music? Practices that, if not done, you will not feel like you are listening to the incorrect music. Sorry, you will feel like you are listening to the incorrect music.
And you want to take that first, as I've been talking a lot?
First, I just want to say these questions are wonderful. I'm really sort of moved by the types of questions that are being asked. If I'm honest, my daily practice is not as daily as it should be, but I can say that there are certain things weekly that I do, and one of them actually is speaking with Scott, which is a real joy in my week, and having the types of champions. My husband as well, similar to Scott, has always been my champion. In fact, I think he saw things in me all the way back when we first met many years ago that I didn't see in myself, and every day there's sometimes annoying reminder of what he sees in me that I don't see in myself. So that I think checking in with him on whatever it is I'm working on is always that maybe is more daily than I recognize, and maybe not as ritualistic, but it's always there. And I think what has really helped me, and that may not show up in my life in a daily practice, but I have done a variety of, and one in particular program that it was actually in Utah in the US. It was called Impact. And it transformed the way my daily life shows up, even if it doesn't necessarily come through as a practice. And that program was, it took 6 months to do, and it was rigorous and grueling in a sense. But I came out the other side completely aware of myself, beyond transformed. And as a result, I think there's an undertone to my daily life where I subconsciously am aware in every moment, am I doing what I'm meant to be doing? Am I here? Am I showing up in the way that I'm supposed to show up? And I would benefit, undoubtedly, I think daily practice is extremely important. I think gratitude is something that I do throughout my day. And with my son, who's 2 years old, I take care of him in the morning and in the evening, and being present to him, I think, has taken up this space of being conscious of my own purpose being mirrored through him. So those 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the evening, I guess in a way because of time, but they become my daily practice, seeing the beauty of, I tell him every night, I pray for you that you remain able to show up as your true and authentic self for the rest of your life, because just being him as he is so beautiful. And I know that there's a little girl, Anya, inside of me that can do that as well. So I think, in a sense, being present to him is my daily practice.
Yeah, I think I probably wouldn't add much of that. That's fantastic, Anya. I totally get that. The gift of being a parent, seeing it that way is really wonderful. Wait till he turns 17, right? So, but anyway, for me, I kind of shared my daily practice. The only thing I will add about what Anya said is when I do my practice about love, I do gratitude for myself. And for those of you all that do not do gratitude, I just really recommend you research it and give it a shot, because it's just amazing. Most of us, we might be fully centered at 8 o'clock, and they get an email, and next thing you know, by 8:35, we're off center. and just being able to say gratitude a couple times a day, for me, literally works. I used to do it daily, but now I do it multiple times a day to just kind of get me back on center.
I think actually for a practical tool around that, when I am good about my daily practice, there's a great app called, I think it's actually called the Gratitude app, and literally gives you an opportunity to just jot down however many things, 2 things, 10 things. You can upload a photo that represents how you feel that day. I think certain things like that particular app really helps me, because it's just, I don't have to worry about where am I writing this, and it's always there. I can refer to it, and now it's a log of years of being able to look back and see how did my life evolve and where was I at in certain moments, and it's really powerful.
Our next question is from Allison. So Allison is saying, self-doubt is real. What can we do to keep ourselves accountable when after that initial self-exploration? Does having a mentor help with this?
I'm going to take that one. Thanks, Scott. Self-doubt is real. And it doesn't matter how together someone appears, how senior in the organization, whether it's within Massy, whether it's in the government. I'm sure the Prime Minister has self-doubt, and across the region, self-doubt is real. So that's just a truth. And my answer to this sort of question and comment is, how do we keep staying centered and also seeing this as a journey, and not beating yourself up that you haven't achieved something. You might set yourself goals. You might say, I'm kind of knowing that I love this, so I need to do that, and then you don't get around to it. There's the pressures, whether it's of family, whether it's of your responsibilities at work. I think not beating yourself up is something that I think is really important. Accepting yourself, the humanity of all of us, particularly during these these COVID times. People say post-COVID. I think we've been COVID for a while. So practicing that this is a journey, taking each day, taking one step at a time is important, and knowing that doubting yourself is human and being vulnerable. So then the other question there about having a mentor, absolutely having a mentor. But then what is a mentor? Does a mentor have to be some sort of a formal program of, you know, connecting people because of certain skills? That can work. Or can it be a friend or your aunt or your nephew or your neighbor, or someone that just shows up in your life that's interested and can be a sounding board for your ideas? So there's just so much in this comment and these questions from Alison that are, it's like the questions of life, without, you know, making it too wide sweeping, but it is a journey. And when we can embrace our self-doubt and embrace our vulnerability and show up authentically as to what we're wrestling with, that is when you get the most help. And that's when the whether it's the doors open or people turn up to give you advice and help, that's when it will happen. So Alison, I hope that helps a little bit. And this whole other point, just to reinforce, holding ourselves accountable, absolutely. And sometimes I just think we just do that a little bit too much, and we're a little bit too hard on ourselves. Yes, strive, yes, work hard to improve, and also cut yourself some slack at times, and enjoy the journey. That's it for me, Ren. I don't know if you want to go on with the next question.
Okay, no problem. Thank you so much, Julie. Our next question is from Chris. What are some steps one can use to pivot in the current role as an employee?
I think what's really important is that, first of all, having a sense of, okay, you may have a sense of what's that position that you're working towards or aspiring that is really in fulfillment of your music. So while you're in your current role and doing your functions, I would suggest that you start to develop an upskill to whatever that role is that you're looking or aspiring towards. So it can be through training, it can be through even getting opportunities. So you're interested in something, and do you in your spare time, because you want to change or evolve to another position, say, well, can I come and observe how this is done? Can I assist, by actually getting simple on-the-job training in that role. And there are people who do that sometimes, whether it's after hours or in their spare time, right? So I think once you have a sense of what it is you're working towards, it is starting to build the skill, build the muscle, do your information, seek opportunities that you can assist or learn or help, volunteer. So it's going to be voluntary. So you may not get paid for the extra duties, but again, your focus is finding your music and really getting that purpose, so it's doing your research, so I'll give you an example. So while I was in my role of group learning and development and thinking about we want to have this or planning towards this Massy Learning Institute, I spent many hours and many nights doing research because there are things I didn't know, right? And for me, that's the investment you do. That's it's a sacrifice of your time, but it's really an investment. So I really think it is having a sense and quick summary of what it is you want to pivot towards. Start to do the research, start to do the preparation, gather information, ask questions, ask many questions, get a coach, seek advice, so that would be my response to that.
All right, so I'll answer this last question because we're running out of time. This one is for Scott. I am almost exactly like you in that I have a zest for this gift of life and maximizing it. And I feel most alive improving the lives of others. I am usually able to listen to people and they feel better about life and themselves after the conversation. My external knowledge, passion, music is around love, spiritual, physical, mental, and emotional health. So I am able to help people improve in these aspects, convert that skill and knowledge into a service business and livelihood. That is, take that music to the studio and get it on iTunes.
So brilliant. So here's the thing. There is no lack of just that skill that was just described, right? The world needs that in spades, right? And there's so many places in which one can offer that, right? That kind of skill set. There are a number of different international coaching certifications if you really want to go that route of being a coach, so to speak, or mentor. But as Julie said, I mean, there's a place to really begin to get some credibility in it. If you don't have, let's say, formal credibility, and volunteering is a great place to start to do that, right? And even volunteering at work as well, right? So, for example, I'm showing the nudge program we're talking about. There are a lot of entrepreneurs who are going to need support and help, right? So it's one of those things where it sounds like you're doing it already, right? And there are just so many avenues that you can pursue, right? If you have a very kind of specific question, you can reach out through Audra, and I can talk to you kind of specifically about what could be some of the avenues that you could pursue very, very specifically. It's nice to have a bit of a niche in that, but all I can say, especially with COVID and the situation we're in, there's a lot of people who really just need help and advice. Okay.
Great, thank you, Rennie. And as Scott and Anya and Julie said, what wonderful, deep, rich questions. And these are the questions, as we're exploring, finding our music, that we need to be asking, we need to be exploring. So we really want to thank you all for asking these questions and allowing us to have the discussion around it, because as I said earlier, this is really timely. So time has flown, we've had a lot of fun, we've learned a lot of stuff, so as we come to the end of our session, and we are sure there'll be many more, of these types of sessions, right? We'd like to thank, first of all, our panelists, for your rich sharing, your personal stories, your experiences, as we really explore and navigate this topic. I'd like to thank you, our attendees, so really being so attentive and engaged and exploring with us, making the journey. I'd also like to thank the MLI team and the Massy Tech team, who always work tirelessly behind the scenes, to make these webinars, successful for us. So I want to thank them. So we want to invite you to please continue to look out for upcoming programs and webinars, but don't just look out, sign up, right? And just to remind you, the top 3 nuggets or takeaways from what we spoke about today. We want to remind you to find persons in your life who inspire and support you to find your music. And most importantly, please don't die with your music inside of you. Everyone, it's been a pleasure. Keep safe, and we invite you to keep leveling up with the Massy Learning Institute. Bye, everybody. Have a wonderful day.